Homelessness in the U.S. hit a record level this year, jumping by more than 18% and rising even higher among families specifically.
A sobering and heartbreaking statistic. A record number of New York City public school students experienced homelessness at some point last year.
According to a report from Miller Samuel and Douglas Elliman, Manhattan rents have hit a record high. The average monthly rent in July was $5,888. $5,000.
For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the latest crime statistics show shootings in the city are up for the second straight year.
As we expect, when warm weather comes, we see an increase in certain crimes.
Think about this for a second. You ever wake up in the morning and feel like your life is not going the way you wanted? Maybe your job is boring. Maybe your apartment is too small. Maybe your neighborhood is not as nice as you wish it was. You look around and think to yourself, man, I deserve better than this. Well, before you start feeling too sorry for yourself, let me tell you something that might change your whole perspective. Right now, in New York State, there are places where people wake up every single day facing challenges that would make most of us fall to our knees and thank whatever higher power we believe in for what we have. I am talking about real American towns where families are barely hanging on by a thread. Here is something that should shake you up. Between 2022 and 2024, homelessness in New York doubled. That means 158,019 people, real human beings just like you and me, do not have a stable place to call home. To put that in perspective, that is 1 out of every 5 homeless people in the entire United States. 1 out of 5.
The number of homeless people in New York City is soaring. In fact, this week it hit a record. And now more people are saying the current plan to stop it is not working.
Let that sink in for a moment. While you are complaining about your landlord or your mortgage payment, over 150,000 people in New York are wondering where they will sleep tonight. Today, we are going to take a hard look at 5 specific towns in New York where life has become incredibly difficult. We are talking about places with crime rates that would keep you awake at night. We are talking about neighborhoods where jobs have vanished like smoke in the wind. We are talking about communities where poverty has wrapped itself around families like a python that just keeps squeezing tighter and tighter. These are not made-up stories or exaggerations. These are real statistics about real places where real Americans are fighting to survive every single day. So stick with me through this whole video because I promise you, by the time we get to number 1, you are going to see your own life in a completely different light. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like opportunities were slipping right through your fingers? Like no matter how hard you tried, things just kept getting harder instead of easier? Now imagine feeling that way every single day, and you start to understand what life is like in Jamestown, New York. This small city sits in the western part of the state with about 28,000 people, and those people are watching their town fade away right before their eyes, like an old photograph that has been left out in the sun too long. The colors are still there, you can still see what it used to be, but everything is getting dimmer and dimmer with each passing year. The numbers tell a story that is hard to ignore. The median income in Jamestown is just $39,507. Stop and think about that for a minute. That means most families are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is only if they are lucky enough to have a steady paycheck coming in at all. The unemployment rate keeps climbing and job opportunities are becoming scarce as hen's teeth. You know what that means for regular people trying to live normal lives? It means parents lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering how they are going to pay the electric bill. It means young people sending out dozens of job applications and hearing nothing back, or worse, getting offers for part-time work that barely covers gas money. On top of all that economic struggle, property crime and violent offenses keep happening at rates that make people nervous about walking around their own neighborhoods after dark.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, you could hang around downtown at night, not worry about anything.
Brenda Whitford says what used to be a safe place is no longer the same.
When people get desperate, when they cannot find legal ways to make ends meet, some of them start making choices they never thought they would make. Now, I will give Jamestown some credit here because I want to be fair. Housing is cheaper here than in many other places in New York. You can actually afford a place to live without selling your kidney on the black market. The schools are actually pretty good, rated well above average, and there are plenty of activities for kids, parks and recreation programs, and community events. Parents appreciate these things, they really do. But here is the million-dollar question that nobody seems to want to answer. What good is cheap rent when you cannot find a job to pay even that cheap rent? What good are great schools when there are no opportunities waiting for your kids after they graduate? The sad truth is that young people grow up in Jamestown, they get educated in those good schools everyone talks about. They learn skills and work hard and dream about their futures, and then they leave. They pack up and move away because staying means accepting a future with very limited possibilities. They leave because they want careers, not just jobs. They leave because they want to feel safe. They leave because they do not want to struggle the way their parents struggled. And you know what happens when all the young people leave? The town gets older, businesses close down because there are not enough customers, property values stay low because who wants to buy a house in a place where finding work feels like searching for a needle in a haystack? The people who remain are not giving up. Do not get me wrong. They still show up for each other, neighbors still know each other's names, there is still a sense of community that a lot of bigger cities have lost. But everyone can feel the struggle hanging over them like a dark cloud that just will not go away. Have you ever been to Niagara Falls as a tourist? Maybe you stayed for a few hours, took some photos of the waterfalls, bought a souvenir t-shirt, ate an overpriced meal, and then drove away feeling like you had a great time. Well, let me tell you something. You were lucky you left. The people who actually live in Niagara Falls do not get to leave when the sun goes down. They are stuck there watching millions of tourists come and go every single year while they struggle to survive in a city that looks beautiful on postcards, but feels like a trap for the people who call it home. Let me hit you with some numbers that tell the real story behind those pretty waterfalls. The poverty rate in Niagara Falls sits at 23.7%. That means nearly 1 in 4 people are living below the poverty line. Think about that. Almost a quarter of the population is struggling to afford basic necessities like food, medicine, and keeping the heat on in winter. But it gets worse when you break down the numbers by race. For Black residents, that poverty rate jumps to 28.7%. For Hispanic residents, it climbs even higher to 29.3%.
The region of Niagara has declared a state of emergency for homelessness, mental health, and opioid addiction.
So while tourists are spending hundreds of dollars on hotel rooms and fancy dinners with a view of the falls, the people who live there are trying to figure out how to stretch $20 until the next payday. Here is the thing about living in a tourist town that most people do not understand. Yes, there are jobs available. Lots of them actually. But what kind of jobs are we talking about? We are talking about waiting tables at restaurants where tourists complain about the service. We are talking about cleaning hotel rooms for minimum wage while your back screams in pain. We are talking about working retail in gift shops, selling cheap souvenirs that nobody really needs. These jobs do not pay enough to escape poverty. They do not come with good health insurance or retirement plans. They are just barely enough to keep you surviving, not thriving, just existing day to day like a hamster running on a wheel that goes nowhere. And here is the cruel joke that makes everything worse. Because Niagara Falls is a tourist destination, the cost of living stays relatively high. Rents are not cheap, property taxes are not cheap. Everything costs more because the local economy is built around people who are just visiting, not people who are trying to build actual lives there. So you have this impossible math problem where your wages stay low but your expenses stay high. And no matter how hard you work, no matter how many hours you put in, you cannot get ahead. You are like a person trying to swim upstream while someone keeps pushing you back down. Crime rates in Niagara Falls reflect this desperation. Violent crimes happen at concerning levels. Property crimes are common enough that people have stopped being shocked when they hear about another break-in or car theft. And the saddest part? A lot of this crime comes from people who are just desperate. People who have tried the legal routes and found nothing but closed doors and empty promises.
Well, Niagara County law enforcement officials say they're trying to make their presence known in the areas they serve to keep their community safe. Nationally, crime spiked during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's no different in Niagara County. There were 4 shootings in 4 days in May in Niagara Falls. Law enforcement says they're trying to keep the streets safe, but there are roadblocks in their way.
Let me ask you to imagine something for a second. Imagine living in a place where more than 1 out of every 4 people around you are poor, where 27.1% of the population lives in poverty according to the latest data. Imagine waking up every morning in a city where opportunity feels like something that only exists on television or in other people's lives, something you can see but never quite touch no matter how hard you reach for it. That place is real, and it is called Newburgh, New York. This small city in the Hudson Valley has been forgotten by progress while the rest of New York moved forward and left it behind in the dust. The numbers paint a picture that is hard to look at but impossible to ignore. Newburgh has a population of around 28,000 people, and the overall poverty rate stands at 27.1%. But when you dig deeper into those numbers, things get even worse. For Black residents, 35.5% are living in poverty, more than 1 in 3. Let that sink in for a moment. When more than a third of a community is struggling below the poverty line, that is not just a few people having hard times. That is an entire community in crisis. Property values in Newburgh remain shockingly low, not because it is a great deal for home buyers looking for a bargain, but because nobody wants to invest in a place that feels like it is stuck in permanent decline. Like a car that has been sitting in a driveway so long that the tires have gone flat and weeds have grown up around it. Here is something that should really grab your attention. Homelessness in the Newburgh and Middletown area has exploded like a bomb going off in slow motion. Between 2022 and 2024, there was a 130% increase in homeless people. A 130% increase in just 2 years. We are talking about families with children, not just single adults. Real families who had homes and jobs and normal lives not too long ago are now sleeping in shelters or in their cars, wondering what happened to the American dream they were promised. Crime statistics tell another part of this ugly story. Violent crimes happen at a rate of 5.9 per 1,000 residents.
I think what we've lost here is a sense of community. We've lost our sense of who we are to stand up and fight.
They sat around a table and shared their thoughts about the current situation in the city of Newburgh.
Some of these mothers are working like 12 hours, 16 hours a day just to pay rent. So nobody's watching the children.
We need more muscle on the streets. We know where the trouble is. We know that. We need more police.
Property crimes occur at 28.4 per 1,000 residents. That creates an atmosphere where people do not feel safe walking their own streets, where parents keep their kids inside even on nice days, where elderly people are afraid to go to the store. When you combine high poverty with high crime, you get a vicious cycle that feeds on itself like a snake eating its own tail. Local businesses cannot survive because people do not have money to spend. When businesses close, there are fewer jobs. When there are fewer jobs, poverty gets worse. When poverty gets worse, crime increases. Round and round it goes. Schools in Newburgh struggle because property tax revenues are low. When schools struggle, kids do not get the education they need to escape. When kids do not get good educations, they end up stuck in the same poverty their parents faced. The cycle continues for another generation, trapping families in circumstances that feel impossible to break free from. Do you remember when your parents or grandparents talked about the good old days? When you could get a factory job right out of high school, work hard for 30 years, and build a solid middle-class life with a house and a car, and maybe even a boat? When a single income could support an entire family. Rochester, New York remembers those days too. The problem is, those factories are gone now. Those jobs disappeared like morning fog when the sun comes up. The people left behind are still trying to figure out what happened, still trying to understand how their city went from being a symbol of American manufacturing success to becoming one of the most struggling cities in the entire state. Let me throw some numbers at you that show just how far Rochester has fallen. This is not some tiny town we are talking about. Rochester has a population of over 210,000 people. This is a major city, and it is hemorrhaging hope like a patient bleeding out on an operating table. A shocking 27.9% of the population lives below the poverty line. That is nearly 3 out of every 10 people struggling just to survive, just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads.
It is a staggering statistic when you hear nearly half of the children in Rochester are living in poverty.
The unemployment rate climbs to concerning levels, but even those numbers do not tell the whole story because they do not count the people who have given up looking for work altogether. Now here is where things get really scary. The crime rate in Rochester sits more than 70% above the national average. Let me repeat that so it really sinks in. More than 70% higher than the average American city. That makes Rochester one of the most dangerous cities in the entire state of New York. In 2024 alone, there were 37 reported homicides with 45 victims.
During a time when we're seeing an alarming number of violent crimes, the Rochester Police Department is dealing with a staffing shortage. That shortage, according to the Rochester Police Locust Club.
Now, the city will tell you that is actually an improvement from previous years, and technically, they are right. But stop and think about what we are really saying here. We are celebrating the fact that only 37 families had someone murdered. Only 45 people lost their lives to violence. That is 45 funerals, 45 families destroyed, 45 holes ripped into the fabric of the community. Motor vehicle thefts, even though they have gone down, still numbered over 2,000 incidents in 2024. The Northeast, Northwest, and Southwest Crescent neighborhoods experience the highest concentration of violent crime, creating entire areas where residents feel like prisoners in their own homes. Rochester became a textbook example of what happens when American manufacturing dies and nothing replaces it. Communities were built around factories that closed decades ago, leaving entire neighborhoods economically hollowed out from the inside. Generational poverty has taken root like a weed that keeps spreading no matter how many times you try to pull it out. Grandparents, parents, and children have all known nothing but struggle. The idea of upward mobility, of working hard and building a better life, feels like a fairy tale instead of something real that regular people can actually achieve. We have reached the top of our list, or I should say the bottom, depending on how you look at it. Buffalo, New York is the worst place to live in the entire state right now, and honestly, the statistics are so bad that they read like a horror story written in numbers. Everything we have talked about so far, all the crime, all the poverty, all the desperation and struggle, Buffalo has it all and then some. This is not just a city with problems. This is a city where multiple crises have crashed together like a 10-car pileup on the highway, and nobody seems to know how to clean up the mess. Let me lay out the numbers so you can see just how bad things have gotten. Buffalo has a population of approximately 276,000 people, making it the second largest city in New York State. That size makes its problems even more catastrophic because we are not talking about a small town struggling, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people living in what has become one of the most dangerous cities in America. The crime rate in Buffalo stands at 69.8% higher than the national average. But wait, it gets worse. The violent crime rate sits at 99.1% higher than the national average. Read that again. Buffalo is literally twice as dangerous as the average American city when it comes to violent crime. In 2024, Buffalo recorded 2,030 violent crimes, which translates to 736 per 100,000 people.
A major national publication labeling Buffalo as one of America's 10 most dangerous cities. The rankings just released by Forbes magazine
Property crimes hit 8,852 incidents, which comes out to 3,211 per 100,000 residents. Now, city officials will point out that things have improved. Shooting victims dropped to 150 in 2024 compared to over 350 in 2020 and 2021. Homicides fell to 30 from 54 in 2022. And yes, those are improvements on paper. But think about what we are really saying here. We are celebrating the fact that only 150 people got shot, only 30 people got murdered. Those are not just statistics. Those are real human beings with families and friends and futures that got stolen from them. Every single one of those numbers represents someone's child, someone's parent, someone's brother or sister. The unemployment rate hovers around 4.5%, which actually sounds better than the national average of 4.7%. But that number hides a darker truth. Many people have stopped looking for work altogether because they have given up hope. Others are working jobs that do not pay enough to actually live on, so they are technically employed but still struggling every single day. Homelessness in the Buffalo and Niagara Falls region increased by 81% between 2022 and 2024, with 1,549 people counted as homeless. That is 1,549 people without a stable place to sleep at night, without a safe place to call home. Buffalo represents the complete collapse of the American dream for a major city. Entire neighborhoods have been abandoned. Houses that once held families now stand empty with broken windows, looking like hollow skulls staring out at streets where nobody walks anymore. Businesses have been shuttered for so long that people forget what used to be there. We have taken a difficult journey together through 5 towns that most Americans would rather not think about. Let me remind you real quick what we have seen. Jamestown, where opportunities are vanishing like water down a drain. Niagara Falls, where poverty hides behind beautiful waterfalls and tourist attractions. Newburgh, where entire communities have been forgotten while the rest of the state moved forward. Rochester, where dangerous streets and generational poverty have trapped hundreds of thousands of people. And finally, Buffalo, sitting at the top of our list as the absolute worst place to live in New York right now. But here is what I need you to understand. These are not just statistics or data points or numbers that I pulled off some website. These are real American towns where real people are struggling right now, today, at this very moment while you are watching this video. So let me ask you something directly. Has watching this video changed your perspective at all? When you woke up this morning and maybe complained about your job or your apartment or your neighborhood, did you realize how much worse things could actually be? Look, I am not saying your problems do not matter. Everyone has struggles. Everyone faces challenges. Everyone has days where life feels hard and unfair. But I am asking you to step back for just a second and consider how much harder life could be. Having a safe place to sleep tonight, that is something thousands of people in these 5 towns do not have. Having food in your refrigerator, that is a luxury that families living in poverty cannot always count on. Having a job to go to tomorrow, even if you hate that job, that is more than many people in these struggling cities can say. Here's the thing that really matters though. The people living in these towns are not lazy. They are not bad people. They do not deserve their struggles. They are Americans just like you and me who have been left behind by economic forces they could not control, by factories closing, by industries dying, by decisions made in government offices far away from their neighborhoods. They are caught in situations that feel impossible to escape, like quicksand that pulls them down deeper every time they try to climb out. And, you know what? It could happen to anyone. Economic disasters do not care about how hard you work or how good a person you are. Circumstances can change faster than you think. So here is what I want you to do. If this video opened your eyes even a little bit, if it made you think differently about your own life or about the struggles other Americans are facing, then hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs a reality check or who should appreciate their situation more. Leave a comment and tell me if you have ever lived in any of these towns, or if you know someone who has, or what you think could be done to help these struggling communities. Because awareness is the first step toward change. We cannot fix problems that we refuse to even look at. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to learn about these difficult realities.